2020, he worked as professor and head department of electronic science, director examination and evaluation, and in charge director of educational multimedia research center at Savitribai Phule University. He was the national coordinator for creation of e-content of electronic science subject under NME ICT program of AMHRD, hosted at InfluNet website. Also supervised e-content creation and MOOCs courses development for Swayam portal. He has been a Dean of Science and Technology faculty and officiating registrar of the Savitribai Phule Pune University. He guided almost 41 students for PhD and 20 students for MPhil. His main field of research interest are embedded systems and VLSI design, nano electronics, optoelectronics, sensors and systems, LED lighting systems, performance and reliability, and wireless sensor network. He has completed 26 research projects funded by various government funding agencies in India, including DOE, UGC, DIT, DAE, CSIR, DST, DRDO, and ISRO as principal or co-investigator. He has published more than 31 books, out of them 5 are international, and more than 200 research paper is reputed journals. तर मोठा अनुभव असणारी सिनियर व्यक्ती आज आपल्याला ह्या महत्वाच्या विषयावरती मार्गदर्शन करण्यासाठी लाभलेली आहे. सरांना आपण विनंती केली होती की IPR, कॉपीराईट, ट्रेडमार्क, पेटंट याविषयी सखोल माहिती तुम्ही आम्हाला द्याल, जेणेकरून पुढच्या कालावधीमध्ये जे फॅकल्टीज आहेत त्यांना विद्यार्थ्यांना गाईड करताना त्याची मदत होईल. ॲट द सेम टाइम जे स्टुडंट्स आहेत, जे टेक्नॉलॉजी बेस्ड एंटरप्रिनरशिप मध्ये इंटरेस्टेड आहेत, प्रशिक्षण घेतात आहेत, त्यांनाही ह्या माहितीचा नक्कीच भविष्यात फायदा होईल. तर आपल्या सर्वांच्या वतीनं मी सरांना विनंती करतो की सर आपण मार्गदर्शन सुरू करावं. डॉक्टर.
Good evening, one and all. It is indeed a pleasure to discuss with teachers from science and technology field and also the budding entrepreneurs. Vigyan Ashram Pabad has been a source of inspiration for many, and especially the kind of technological developments which are taking place there through various efforts of the people working at Vigyan Ashram, contributing in voluntary fashion. That is amazing in developing technologies which are appropriate, which are useful for the rural youth and the society in general. Now, in this context, we are to really look at the concept of IPR, intellectual property rights, in perspective of knowledge economy. We realize that there used to be the economical developments which were based on human labor or the human efforts. There used to be economic developments based on power, what one considers as muscle power or power of political origin. But now, in the recent years, the situation is completely transformed, and it is realized that we have the power not in terms of the muscle power, but it is the power which is generated through the knowledge. And therefore, the economy, as what happens now, is the knowledge economy. And in this knowledge economy, we have lots of things which basically are generated through our thought process, through our creation of mind. And this creation of mind is something which is basically the individual's original contribution to the knowledge, to the development, to the society as such. And it should be, and there is a possibility, there is a tool, there is a route available for the protection, and that is what we call as intellectual property right protection. So this route has to be understood, and that's what the topic of today's discussion will be. We are now in a new era of power and influence. Politics and ideology have taken a subordinate role to profit and market-driven policies. Say, in the early history of the humankind, politics and ideologies, they used to be driving the major activities. Maybe the kings, kingdoms, various kinds of emperors, and the wars they fought. That used to be the kind of scenario. Uh, or there used to be various kinds of ideologies, the philosophies, the religious philosophies. They used to be driving. But now we realize that yes, in the recent years, the things have changed, and the profits are essentially something which is very much important. And the market-driven policies of the institutions, of the government organizations, of the say multinational companies, corporations. So these are very much important. They are taking the front seat. Multinational corporations, media conglomerates, and even few leading universities can be seen as new neocolonists seeking to dominate the commercial game. And that is what basically we are just looking at, that the commercial gain is something which is being looked at as the positivity. Society needs knowledge for growth. As we know that the human race has got transformed through centuries or millennia of time frame. And in this historic time frame, we realize that starting from maybe the first kind of innovation, the growth through the identification of fire and various uses of fire and will and so on. So from that time to the time that we are living today in the information technology era, we realize that there have been lots of things which have transformed, and this essentially has been transformed because of the knowledge. We get the knowledge through experience, we get the knowledge through various kinds of say acquaintances with the different phenomena and different kinds of activities which we carry out in our lifetime. Through that we get the knowledge, and this knowledge, when it is used for betterment of the society, we say that the society grows. The economists therefore say that knowledge has the character of non-rival public good. Knowledge which you may have or any individual may have is of no use unless it is applied, unless it is made public, and therefore it becomes public good. Say you cannot say that I know this and this will be only used for my purpose. No, that will not happen, because it will be, once it is declared, once it is suggested, then it can be used for many. And in fact, society therefore needs knowledge for its growth. And this knowledge is essentially generated through various kinds of means and methods. So let's understand what is knowledge. Knowledge is a familiarity with someone or something, which can include facts,
सगळं झाडावं लागेल वाटतं.
information, description, skills, which we acquire through experience or through education. So we ourselves experience or somebody teaches us, and through that we get this knowledge. In information technology, knowledge is to an enterprise or an individual the possession of information or ability to quickly locate it. So having knowledge is important, but more important is the usefulness of that knowledge, how quickly you can adapt, you can realize that this knowledge is useful for a particular context, for a particular situation, and how quickly you use that knowledge. That is more important. So having knowledge is power, but more important is the power of use of the knowledge, application of the knowledge. There are different types of knowledges. One calls it as a tacit knowledge, as with practical skills or expertise. And this expertise is context specific, it is personal, and it cannot be transferred. So we know that there are a number of artisans in the society, and these artisans, they master certain art, certain craft by their own experience and their own skills. The skills are honed, they are improving over the period. and they master them. But how they have mastered, probably it is very difficult for them to explain. They try, of course. There are ways and means of transferring the skills as well. But the skills, most of the times, or the expertise, most of the times, is personal. Whereas there is an explicit knowledge, as with theoretical understanding of a subject, which probably can be bookish through the books or through various information resources. It can be transferred. It is easily collected, organized, and transferred. It also can be codified. It is objective, and in that sense, we find that there are a number of, say, efforts done in making the things objective. Once we define some objectivity, then there is no issue which is related to one individual understanding it or the other. It is the same for everyone. So we realize that there are three terms which are normally encountered. Those terms are data, information, and knowledge. And what we realize is that data is based on simple observations of the world, which we make. We say that there is 36 degrees temperature today. The maximum temperature of today is 36 degrees. Or yesterday it was a little colder. Or maybe there is humidity which is causing some trouble. So these are the data. And these observations of the world, they provide us the knowledge. And this essentially is converted by way of data with relevance and purpose. So any observations, they are called as data. They can be easily captured. They are easily structured. They are easily documented as well as transferred, and they are quantified. Now this data, it is available, but it doesn't make any sense unless it has some relevance or it has some purpose. And therefore, knowledge is something which is based on the relevance and purpose. It requires unit of analysis, needs consensus on meaning. Human mediation is necessary, and often it is a lot of transformation that is taking place in the transfer of this knowledge, because maybe what is meaning to one may not be the meaning to the other, and therefore there could be some misinterpretation of the data that could take place. We have what is called as information. This information is from the humankind perspective. It includes reflection, synthesis, and context. Means whatever is the knowledge that we have, on that knowledge, what is your thought process? How you look at it, how you have synthesized, that essentially gives you the information. In the specific context, one describes the knowledge, and therefore that results into information. This is hard to capture electronically. You cannot have some kind of sensor or some kind of device to capture the information. It is hard to structure. It is often tacit, hard to transfer, highly personal to the source. So for this purpose, there will be larger and larger human intervention needed. So human contribution is more, from data to information. A lot of human contributions we look at. Say, for example, we realize that the hospitals maintain record of the patients and the symptoms and the treatments, as well as the effects which are of the effects of the treatment. They are all recorded. They are all written down, and the case papers are maintained for years. Now these case papers, they represent whatever is written on that is representing the data. This data, when it is making some kind of relevance or purpose, that for the purpose of diagnostics it is used, or for the purpose of billing it is used, or for the purpose of maybe tracing the history of a particular disease it is used. So then it is knowledge. And when we say that all this is combined together with opinions, we say that there is first opinion, second opinion of the experts. So when these opinions are included, then it becomes information. many products incorporating new knowledge can be easily copied. Now, this is something which is very, very serious and significant. Probably most products with sufficient effort can be copied at a fraction of a second, as well as fraction of a cost it took to invent and market them. And this copying is something what essentially we have to worry about, because we put a lot of efforts. Say an inventor puts a lot of efforts, puts a lot of resources, invests huge amount of time, and then when it reaches the market, somebody just very easily copies that and tries to take business advantage out of it. This essentially copying detours the inventors. That is, the inventors feel that, oh, I'm depressed because I put so much of effort, so much of money, so much of time, and this fellow, he just copied my product and he is getting the benefits. I am probably at loss. So that is something what happens, and therefore the inventors get depressed, and the inventors essentially uh, probably do not get motivation enough for further inventions. So naturally, this is where the protection of the inventions is very much important. So if product takes considerable effort, ingenuity and research, but can be copied easily, there is likely to be a sufficient financial incentive from the society's point of view to devote resources to invention. Protection is therefore a bargain struck by the society on the premise that in its absence there would be insufficient invention and innovation, and the inventors or the people who have that urge for generating new knowledge, they probably will not be generating that, and the society will be at loss. And it is here essentially the intellectual property right that is a concept which is introduced. The intellectual property rights are defined as any original creative work manifested in a tangible form can be legally protected. So there is a legal framework. Now this legal framework comes from the governments. This, of course, we have to understand that the legal framework is provided by the governments of various countries as well as the global agglomeration of governments of different countries. This intellectual property right is associated with intellectual property which gives legal protection, is referred to as IPR. When we speak of IP rights, we refer to controlling the way IP is used, accessed, or distributed. IPR regimes affect the diffusion of scientific knowledge, the innovation process, and ultimately the economic performance. इथे आपल्याला हे लक्षात घेतलं पाहिजे की IPR हा जो काही विषय आहे, हा विषय जे काही इनोव्हेटर्स असतील, या कोणाला नवीन काहीतरी डेव्हलप करण्याची इच्छा असेल आणि त्यांनी प्रयत्न करून नवीन डेव्हलपमेंट्स केलेले असतील, तर त्यांना प्रोटेक्शन मिळण्याच्या दृष्टिकोनातनं, म्हणजे त्यांचं जे नॉलेज आहे किंवा त्यांचं जे कॉन्ट्रीब्युशन आहे याच्या बदल्यात त्यांना काहीतरी मिळावं, या दृष्टिकोनातनं IPR ची निर्मिती झालेली आहे. The intellectual property refers to creation of minds, that is invention, literary and artistic work, symbols, names, images, designs used in commerce. It allows people to own their creativity and innovations in the same way that they can own physical property. We are quite familiar with the ownership of the physical property, maybe our house, maybe our clothes, maybe our various objects which we possess in our houses or offices or institutions, or maybe even for that matter, car or vehicles of different kind. Now, these are tangible, these are well defined. So in the same way, the intellectual property also can be defined, and it is said to be the property of the creator. And the creator then gets the right of using it. He can control just the same way like your vehicle you would own, and then you would be responsible for its maintenance, as well as you would be getting the privilege of using it. If somebody else tries to use it, you would stop him. If somebody does it by way of force, maybe he steals, then you have the right to go to the police and get advantage of the legal system against that particular thief, and the thief can be penalized. So in the same manner, the intellectual property what you have created, this intellectual property can be protected, provided, of course, this is very important, it is not protected by natural process. The intellectual property protection has to go through some kind of process, and we'll be discussing about the process. There is a legal framework through which we have to go through. Say, for example, when we buy our house, we do not pay to somebody the money upfront and we say that, oh, the house is mine. No, there is a process, what we say the registration process. So we have to go to the registrar of properties, and then at the registrar's office you have to sign into some kind of agreement. Maybe there is a agreement in the first place, then there is a deed after the completion of the construction of particular house or building, and then you get the rights transferred to you. Now this particular registration process is very much important there. The registration process is essentially maintaining all the record of the ownership. We know that there are huge amounts of fields around us, but they are owned by someone, either inherited or they have been bought by someone. So there is a possibility that the record can be found with a legal system. The revenue department maintains the entire record of centuries is available with them, so that you can trace back and you can find out that this property belonged to whom. So in the same manner, you can also have the record of the intellectual property that you have created, and then its record can be maintained. We otherwise have a kind of understanding that, oh, scientists and technocrats for centuries together, they invent certain things, and the new inventions, they are basically providing them name, fame, but probably there is no wealth. But that doesn't happen that way. It essentially goes through a process of registration, goes through a process of legal framework, and then you get the advantage in terms of the monetary gains out of your inventions. There are a number of different categories of the intellectual properties. One essentially begins with patent. One can look at copyrights, trademarks and domain names of different types, trade secrets, utility models as well as designs, plant breeders' rights, plant breeds of new varieties, and similarly there are geographical indications. These different categories of the intellectual property, they have been defined by the legal framework. And in this legal framework, you can have various, say, creations what you have registered, recorded. Say, for example, we say that who is the inventor of telephone, and we immediately recall, oh, Graham Bell invented the telephone. Now, Graham Bell invented a telephone, that is true, but actually he was not the only one who could essentially get into that particular method of communication. But he was definitely the one who first went into the patent office and registered a patent of the telephone as a concept. So naturally, after getting that registration, his name is associated with the invention of the telephone. Similarly, we find that, especially in the Indian context, this is very important. There is an Indian scientist named Jagdish Chandra Bose, J.C. Bose. Now, he was very, very innovative. Lots of inventions he worked with. Out of them, one was very important, that was related to the radio communication. But we know for sure, majority of us, that the credit of radio goes to Marconi, an Italian scientist. Why he got the credit of radio, invention of radio? Because he went into the patent office and got the patent registered. J.C. Bose did not register the invention, so he did that particular discovery or the invention much earlier, but still the credit for the entire world, the credit goes to Marconi for discovery of or invention of radio. So we have many such stories which we can narrate. Uh, there is a legislative framework for the intellectual property administration, and especially India entered into the intellectual property domain uh, quite recently. Actually, the earlier, say, intellectual property acts or the patent acts, they were adopted from the British government. British rule we had, and those things were adopted. So till about say 1990s, really not much of development in this domain took place. One can see that the Patent Act was adopted, that was actually 1856, and then subsequently 1970, this was adopted by the Indian government. And because not many patents were actually applied or registered in that phase. And this Patent Act has been recently amended in 2005. There are patent rules in 2006. They're also amended in 2006. 2006. There are design acts, Design Act of 2000, design rules of 2001. So we can see that these are very recent kind of things. Now these recent acts or amendments, these are essentially because the new era of economy that has begun, and that era is the global economic development era or global cooperation. So GATT is the origin of all this. That essentially got signed in 1995, and after the GATT treaty, uh, all the global activities, they came under one single roof, and that forced various countries, including India, to amend their acts or establish new acts related to the intellectual property rights. In this, we find that 1957 Copyright Act was amended in 1999. So we have number of these acts which are up to date, which have been amended recently, maybe last 20, 30 years, and the amendments continue. But what is important is the concept. So for example, there is a concept, there is a concept called trade secret concept. Now this is very interesting concept. We find that decades ago, a company named Coca-Cola, they decided that they will not essentially uh, give information related to what are the contents of their uh, soft drink. So they decided to keep its soft drink formula as a secret. Now, what is this secret? Is the formula is not given to anyone, it is not known to anyone. The formula is known only to a few people within their company. And these few people, they had several restrictions. We'll look at them. This formula is kept in the vault of a bank in Atlanta. And those who know the secret formula have signed a non-disclosure agreement. They are not supposed to disclose this information to anyone else. And if there is a probably leakage in some manner or the other, there is a likelihood that they would be punished quite heavily. It is rumored that they are not allowed to travel together. So even by mistake, during their discussions, if some part of it is revealed, that also is not essentially possible. So one has to take a lot of precautions. So this particular concept is keeping it secret, and therefore for almost 100 years, this secret is secret. It is not known to anyone else. Only those few people within the company, they maintain that, they know that, and they use it. On the other hand, What happens with the patents? Patents are the rights given to individual inventors for their, of course, inventions. And these individual inventors, they can basically own the rights. That means the ownership is basically they are allowed to stop anybody else from using that particular thing. So whatever technology or whatever chemical formula which is patented, that chemical formula is essentially banned from, means others are banned from using it. Others cannot use it for any commercial gain. Then what happens? If somebody else tries to use it, these people who have got, or the one inventor who has got the intellectual property right, he has a right to stop that. He goes and says that it is mine, you cannot use it. If you want to use it, then there is a cost associated with it. There is a license fee he is allowed to charge. And that also is not something like this, that if somebody pays that license fee, he will be required to give that information or allow that particular business to work on it. No, that also is dependent on his own wish and will. So because he is the owner, he would do anything with it. He would use it for himself, he would donate it to somebody else, he would transfer the right to somebody else, or he will sell. Whatever he wishes to do, he can do. But this is not indefinitely. Unlike the physical property, say for example, land ownership. So you know that the land ownership is perpetual. It goes from generation to generation. Similar kind of thing doesn't happen with the patents. Patents have a limited life. Means the duration of the patent is limited. So for limited period, the thing is your ownership. It is known to others, but they cannot use it. Okay, whatever information that is contained in your invention or in your innovation, that you have to give to the society in lieu of the rights the society is offering to you. So if the society is offering you exclusive rights for certain amount of time, certain period, then what your obligation is that you have to disclose everything completely. So had that happened, then Coca-Cola 100 years back would have patented that formula, and then after maybe whatever period, 15, 20 years, that formula would have been made public. But that has not happened because they thought that it is worthwhile protecting it as a secret. Once it is declared as a secret, that means there are, say, gold ornaments in your house and you are just maintaining them. You are not looking at any other thing. If some thieves come and break into your house, they can steal them. Maybe what you have is, if you have the say receipts of them, you can go and make a police complaint. The police will try to find out, and if they find, and if they essentially justify that yes, this belongs to you, then it will be. But it's a long process. Instead of that, they have maintained it secret, means they are on their own risk, they are maintaining it. Whereas if it is registered as a patent, then it is the responsibility of the patent system that we will be looking at. That patent system will essentially give you all kinds of rights, all kinds of say strengths for you. Yes, they will work for you. So that doesn't happen in this case. So this second example is essentially of a patent which has been registered. So there is a patent for stud and tube coupling system, the way bricks are pulled together. And then this essentially is the origin of the Lego toys. But since they patented it, now what happens is the patent have long expired. Since its duration is over. The companies tries hard to keep their competitors out by using some designs, trademarks, copyrights as the other IPRs. But there are many others who have entered into the competition and they make similar kind of things or maybe little variations here and there, and then they have the toys. So Lego is the original company who had invented that kind of thing, but now they struggle very hard. We have different IPRs, and the IPRs are protected by different acts. Say trademarks, Trademark Act of 1999, patents, Patent Act of 2005, copyrights, Copyright Act of 1957, recently amended in 2000. Designs, Design Act, geographical indicators, again, geographical indications of goods, Act 1999, plant varieties, semiconductor IC layout designs, and so on. So these different variety of intellectual properties are protectable under the Indian IPR system. India is a member. India is a member state of World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO. It is an international organization responsible for promotion of protection of intellectual property throughout the world. So when you are a member of such organization, if you protect your invention in India, it essentially can be protected in different other countries as well. Otherwise, what happens? It is territorial in nature. So if you protect within your country, maybe somebody else in some other country can still copy it, and you would be deprived of the benefits by selling into that country. So let's understand now what patents are. The patents are granted by way of various, say, criteria. Any innovation can be patented, any product can be patented. In fact, in India, there are two types of patents possible. One patent is called as the product patent. So you can have a product patented, or you can have the process of manufacturing that particular product patented. So patents are given for the inventions, and the inventions should follow or should satisfy the following criteria: that the invention must be new, it must be non-obvious, and it must be capable of industrial application. If you don't satisfy, if your invention doesn't satisfy any one of these three, application or the registration request will be rejected. Patent will not be granted. New means it should not be known to anybody else earlier. And how this is done? This is done by way of what is called as a prior art search. So when the patent attorneys essentially initially when they try to file your patent application, they would essentially carry out prior art search. Means what is already published by either the patent journals or international journals of different kinds, or it is available on the WIPO or IPO websites, USPTO website. USPTO is United States Patent Office, or European Patent Office, or Japanese Patent Office, or say WIPO, that is World Intellectual Property Organization. So on their websites, there is huge amount of data, huge number of patents or inventions they are already provided. So when anybody wants to register for some patent, the patent attorney essentially goes through all that. There are databases which are searched, and they would find out what is the prior art in this particular domain. And your patent application has to be new. That is the first thing. That is the inventive step. So it has to be step change. Yes, there is some substantial change compared to what already exists. What is the prior art? Then there is a non-obviousness clause. The non-obviousness clause is that even though you say that it is some change, but that change, if it is obvious, if it comes to somebody's mind just like that, oh, I have this particular object, I'll change its color. So that's obvious. Or maybe if it is sphere, I'll make it maybe little elongated, and that essentially is obvious. So that should not happen. In fact, by definition in the Act, there is something which is stated that the obviousness is something which comes naturally in the mind of a graduate in the domain. So a graduate person's knowledge level is considered, and then whatever would come because of that knowledge in his mind, that essentially is considered as obvious, and this should be non-obvious in that context. Similarly, if there is something which is non-obvious, which is new, but if it doesn't have any applications, the patent will not be granted. So industrial application, it's not the application in the domestic field, or it is not the application somewhere around us. It is basically some kind of industrial production and relating to some business opportunity. So this is something what is very important. So patent gives an inventor the exclusive right for a limited period to stop others from making, using, or selling an invention without the permission of the inventor. It is a deal between an inventor and the government, because the government is the one who gives the patent rights. So government and the inventor, it is deal between them, in which the inventor is allowed a short-term monopoly of that product in return for allowing the invention to be made public. So when you have some product developed, you have to give all the details to the government, and the government publishes those details for public. So they are openly available, no secret. It has to be a complete disclosure of the information related to that product. So the complete disclosure is the primary clause. So when you write your patent application, you have to give all the details. In return, the government promises you to protect that this will not be used by anybody else. And if somebody else tries to use it, that is what is called as the infringement, that will be penalized. So that promise is made by the government, but the government in turn expects that you will make it completely open. Say you have to make an application, so anything which is with you as an invention, what you can do is you can essentially, in the first place, make a provisional application where you are just protecting your concept, and within a year you have to make the complete application. So when you have provide the complete application, your patent will be examined, and after examination it will be given that particular inventor the right, the patent is granted. But you are protected from the first original application when you filed your provisional application. So from that date it is protected. That means you have to disclose everything. That disclosed thing will be made public. Everybody who can read will be available to him, but he cannot use that for any kind of, say, productionization, or he cannot use it for selling without your permission. So you have to essentially make sure that your invention is everything, every detail is given, but that details, they are not useful for anybody else without your permission. He can use it for say maybe some trials and this and that, but he cannot make any profit out of it. He cannot create a competition to you. Obligation of the applicant is disclose the invention complete. Complete disclosure is the obligation. The term of patents is 20 years from the time of filing the patent application. So when you apply, from that time onwards, that date onwards, the 20 years time is counted. There is a very strong patent examination process. So there are experts who examine that. It is made public. Through public also objections are invited, and through all that process, finally when it goes through all that process, patent is granted. You can use it for 20 years. For every year of use, means every year after that, you would pay some small amount of fee, token fee. That is basically keeping that patent in force. Means it is not that it is one time you apply and you will get that patent right. You have to keep on paying fee year after year, up to 20 years. After 20 years, it is open to everyone. Anybody can use it. So whatever things which are patented, say you can find there are a huge amount of databases available, various places the information is available. You can search that and you can use those. That's a very big knowledge resource that one has. You can use those if the patent period is completed. That is, the term is over. The patent is said to be expired in that case. So after expiration, the whole information is available for anyone to use. So probably inventors or innovators can make use of that and make further additions, changes, or any new inventions based on it. There is a TRIPS agreement, which essentially allows the entire world to essentially define what would be the patent period or patent term. So this essentially under that TRIPS agreement, the whole thing is defined. The other kind of intellectual property that one can really look at, that is called as industrial design. Now this industrial design is something which is basically the features of shape, configuration, pattern, ornament, or composition of lines or colors applied to any article by any industrial process or means, whether manual, mechanical, or chemical, separate or combined, which in the finished article appear to be and are judged solely by the eye. So it is basically what is perceived, what is seen, what is external, say, look, that is protectable under the design kind of registration. People many a times wrongly interpret it as a design patent. It is not design patent. Patent is for the functionality, whereas design is for appearance. So you can protect it from the appearance point of view. Maybe functionally it may have similar things as others. Say for example a camera. Now camera is camera. It has got some lenses, it has got some sensor, it has got some say iris or shutter. So there are those mechanisms which are well known. The principles are known, but the look of it, look and feel of it is different. So you get camera from Sony, you get camera from Samsung, you get different other companies making the cameras. So they are basically, the external appearance is different. Though the internal mechanisms, they are same, the appearance is different, and that appearance is something what comes under the design clause. Here it is categorically stated that it does not include any mode or principle or construction or anything which is substance, which in substance or mere mechanical device. So this functionality is not included in the design. It is only the external appearance, how it looks like. So we have industrial designs of different kinds. Say for example, this is a mug, and then this has got some heater into it. So the appearance is like this. Now you may have the appearance change, and then it will be a different kind of design. You can essentially look at the designs, and you find that there are a number of industries which are basically registering for the design registrations, say shoe industry, chappals, paint, textile goods, carpets, wall clocks, ceramic tiles, plumbing equipment, sanitary goods, and so on. Similarly, the medium scale industries, including washing machines, refrigerators, television, etc. Several consumer products, their external appearance is something what is being looked at. Several pharma products, textile and jewelry. In fact, there are huge amount of activities in the jewelry design. Say, for example, you have a toothbrush, and the toothbrush we find that it is a brush. It has essentially some kind of stick, and there are some bristles at the end. But no, there are large varieties in that. There are several parts of it, several shapes are given, and looks are made very attractive with colors and various kinds of things. So you can see the shapes, their say kind of flexibility that is emphasized sometimes. So these all essentially come under the design registration. When companies are competing at an equal price, so most of the toothbrushes, they are almost pricing the same. Their functionality is also similar. Design is the only differential that matters. Means whether it is Colgate toothbrush or whether it is Oral-B or some other, what makes the difference is the design. Because other things are same, functionality is same, prices are similar. So one really has only this design as the differential. Industrial design is therefore, it is a new or original idea in relation to the features of the shape, configuration, pattern, etc. It signifies something solid, where an idea is incorporated into the article. The act governing the designs is Design Act 2000. It gives you that it is means any article of manufacture or any substance, artificial or partly artificial and partly natural, includes any part of the article capable of being made and sold separately. Now you can look at this language. Why I have included this slide is that the language, many a times it so happens that when we are reading, we find that, oh, things are repeated so many times. The same thing is written, same thing is, but it is not the same thing. There are different aspects associated with different parts. Different words are used very categorically for signifying something. So it means any article of manufacture. Means all the details are included here. And any substance, artificial or partly artificial. It again has got some kind of significance, and partly natural, and includes any part of article capable of being made and sold separately. So this is the definition of design. It means only features of shape, configuration, pattern, ornament, or composition of lines or colors applied to any article, whether in 2-dimension or 3-dimension or both, by any industrial process or means, whether manual, mechanical, or chemical, separate or combined. So these all things, they include everything in this domain. Means there is no ambiguity left. That's what the meaning is. Requirements for design registration is that the design should be new or original. It should be distinguishable from known designs. Should be applied to an article. Hypothetical designs are not registrable. Not be disclosed to public in any form. Means it is earlier disclosure is detrimental. So if you are creating a new design, that design should be secret till the point of registration. After registration, you can disclose, you can do any advertisements, or you can put it in public, no issues. But prior to design, it should not be disclosed to anyone. It should appeal to eye. It should not comprise of obscene matter, not be contrary to public order or morality. So these are the important obligations for the designers. Say, for example, some of the articles like calendars, certificates, forms, greeting cards, leaflets, maps, building plan, medal, or some mechanical contrivance, some basic shapes, variations commonly used in the trade, mere workshop alterations, flags, emblems, or signs. These are not registrable. Means you cannot register them under design. So you have to essentially have some original contribution in terms of design. The designs include pharmaceutical designs. Say, for example, there could be designs of some drugs or some tablets, or it could be some inserts into the packets. So these essentially are the booklets. So these can be essentially protected as Pharmaceutical Design Act, under the Pharmaceutical Design Act or Pharmaceutical Copyright Act. Now comes the domain of trademarks. Trademark is another intellectual property which is basically signifying or symbolizing some kind of trade practice. And this trade practice is, say, somebody is in the business, somebody is trading certain objects, and those objects which are being traded are a kind of business that associates with certain quality, certain reputation. Now this reputation or the quality is something which is protected under the Trademarks Act. Trademark is any sign which can distinguish the goods and service of one trader from those of another. The sign includes words, logos, colors, slogans, three-dimensional shapes, and sometimes sounds and gestures. A trademark is therefore a badge of trade origin. It is used as marketing tool so that customers can recognize the product of a particular trader. It is many a times marked with the words TM, trademark, but even TM is not used many a times. The trademark registration is enough. The trademark should not include geographical indicators, deities, national leaders, heroes, symbols, some laudatory words. So they should be avoided in the trademark. It includes a device, brand, heading, label, ticket, name, signature, word, letter, numeral, shape of goods, packaging, or combination of colors, or any combination thereof. That is what the mark is, and this is trademark. Means for the purpose of trading, this is used. So this purpose of trademark is to identify the origin of the product or service. It distinguishes the product from the proprietor from others. It guarantees the quality of the product or service, and it is to advertise the product and service. So we come across several such kind of things many a times, and in fact their brand name becomes their trademark. Whatever brand name is there, that becomes their trademark. Many a times those trademarks are registered. Some imitations, they try to copy those and they get caught in the legal procedures. So this is the importance of trademark. The registration is a prima facie evidence of proprietorship of the trademark. It gives exclusive right to use the trademark in respect of goods and services, and to take legal action in case of infringements. The registered proprietor may assign or license the trademark as any other property. So that happens with any other IPR as well. So maybe if you are registered proprietor or owner of a particular intellectual property, you can assign it You can say that, okay, this can use this union, or this gentleman can use this. Fine. Maybe you can strike a deal with him that, oh, if you use this, then with every product that you sell, you have to give me some percentage. Or if you use this, then my stakes in your company would be this much. So these kinds of things, trades, they are essentially made. Similar to this, trademarks also can be used. The registered proprietor can enjoy the goodwill associated with the registered trademark forever if the mark is renewed from time to time. The trademark, initially it is issued for 5 years, and after every 5 years you have to renew it. If you don't renew, then naturally your goodwill will be ceased, and then you will not be able to use that trademark again. But if you keep on renewing, and renewal is not very costly, and it is not clumsy, it's a very simple process. So for example, there is a trademark case. This was on 4th May of 2010. You can see that there is a fountain pen nib, and that fountain pen nib included figure of Mahatma Gandhi, and this Mahatma Gandhi figure, that essentially was going against the use of national leaders as your trademark. So this particular company, Montblanc Pen Company, since they use this image, they had to essentially suffer a penalty, and a penalty was given to them, as well as the permission of using this particular image as a trademark, that was taken away. Now you can register the trademarks in India as well as abroad. It is not necessary that it should be only within India, but worldwide. If your trade is, if your products are going world over, then you can essentially do that registration process as well. Let's try and understand what this is. In case you want to register and protect your trademark within the territory of India, you must register it with the Registrar of Trademarks in Indian Trademarks Registry. So there is a office called Indian Trademarks Registry, and there is an officer called Registrar of Trademarks. So you can essentially register with him. The Controller General of Patents, Design and Trademarks is the Registrar of Trademarks. So the Controller General of Patents, Designs and Trademarks is the head of this particular organization. His office is located in Kolkata, but there are 4 different offices in the metro cities, and these different offices, they cover the territories around them. So you can apply to any one of these offices which is closer to you, and you can get the registration. There is a administrative setup of this particular IPR, in the sense that there is a Government of India, which is of course with all the parliamentary backup system. They have all the rights, but then under that, the Ministry of Ministry of Commerce and Industry has the Department of Industry Policy and Promotion. So this under that particular ministry, the Controller General of Patents, Design and Trademarks is the officer who is given this authority, and he can register patents, designs, trademarks, geographical indications, etc. And there are different offices. The head office is in Kolkata. So the other offices are in Ahmedabad, Delhi, Mumbai and Chennai. So at those places, the physical offices are located, but you can register online. It is not necessary that you should physically visit the office and you can do the registration. You can do it in the online mode. All the functions are performed through a web-based trademark system. The central server of trademarks registration is at IPO building in Delhi, and backup in Mumbai. All branches are connected with central server by VPN. All the actions done by the office staff through the TMS is recorded and the central server on real-time basis. So you don't have to worry about. All what you have to do is you have to select a good trademark, apply for registration on appropriate form with appropriate fee, and the fees are not very high, maybe in matter of hundreds or some thousands, few thousands. So depending on the kind of registration that you're looking for. Then you have to classify your goods and services and specify them properly. Apply before appropriate office of the trademark registry. Respond to office queries. If the office issues some queries or notices, then you have to respond them in time. But once the queries are satisfied, you will get the registration. Online registration, you can have any person having digital signature. This is a requirement. Class 3 digital signature is a requirement. So this digital signature, with this digital signature, you can apply and you can pay the fees through e-filing services for trademark gateway available on the office website. So you have the online filing. After you apply, after you file your application, there is an examination conducted, and the examination involves, say, checking of the database. If the particular trademark or that particular service is already belonging to somebody else is proprietor of that, so that is checked, and if it is found that it is not issued to anyone else, then of course that particular trademark is given to you. So this is the overall registration process, and though here I have elaborated this in the context of trademark, but similar kind of process will be there for other IPRs as well. Receipt of application, data entry and digitization, examination of application, approval by supervisors, then issue of release of examination reports. In case there are no objections or objections waived, the publication of this is in the trademark journal. This publication is something which is important because it is made public, and if public has any applications, any kind of oppositions for that, then public can also make opposition. So this is an open system, because it is not secretly issued by the government or government office. It is an open system. It is made public, and anybody in the public who has certain apprehensions, he can come back and prove that, oh, this is something which is objectionable. So if there is a opposition of this kind, that will be examined, and maybe if the opposition is significant, then you will be intimated accordingly. So the queries would be generated. Otherwise, of course, there is no issue. If nobody objects to it, no opposition or opposition decided in favor of the applicant, then your application proceeds to the registration. Now, if that goes into the registration, once it is registered, your trademark is your own property. You have other kinds of processes. In case you have some issues, some problems, then you have to go through different other kinds of loops. If there are cases of infringement of trademark, means if you have registered trademark with you now, and if somebody else essentially tries to use that particular kind of thing or something similar, then you can file a civil suit in the court, and the court will essentially have various kinds of activities. For example, injunction. Injunction is say attaching your property or other thing is somebody else who is infringing, so his property can be attached, or there could be damages, which there could be some kind of penalties he'll have to pay. He will also have to pay some kind of fine to the government So there are lots of things which are there associated with it. It is a serious offense. And in fact, this is only for the civil suit, but many times it is considered as a criminal offense also sometimes. And when there is a criminal offense considered, then it is quite possible that the punishment could be in the form of even imprisonment. So few years imprisonment is applicable for certain infringements of IPR. So one has to be careful, and after the infringement is proven, the punishment would be given to that particular infringer.
येस सर, आपण काही क्वेश्चन्स घेऊ शकतो का मला?
हो, अगदी अगदी.
एक हंगारे म्हणून आहेत प्रोफेसर, त्यांनी असं विचारलं की व्हॉट आर द क्लेम्स इन पेटंट अँड व्हॉट इज नोवेल्टी अँड व्हॉट इज कॉल्ड एज ब्लॅक बॉक्स पिरियड्स. चार्ट मध्ये क्वेश्चन आहे.
ज्या वेळेला आपण पेटंट ऍप्लिकेशन किंवा कुठलाही IPR ऍप्लिकेशन करायचा प्रयत्न करतो, तर आपण आपल्या दृष्टिकोनातून असं म्हणत असतो की हे माझं नवीन काहीतरी प्रोडक्ट केलेलं आहे आणि हे नवीन प्रोडक्ट मला आता प्रोटेक्ट करायचं आहे. आय वॉन्ट टू इस्टॅब्लिश माय ओनरशिप ऑन दिस पर्टिक्युलर प्रोडक्ट. त्यावेळेला मी ते डिस्क्राईब करायचा प्रयत्न करतो. तर मी डिस्क्राईब करताना त्यातल्या कुठल्या कुठल्या गोष्टी मी त्याची ओनरशिप माझी आहे असं म्हणेन, त्या सगळ्या गोष्टींना क्लेम म्हणतात. म्हणजे याच्यातले याचं हे फंक्शनॅलिटी, याची ही फीचर्स, याची ही स्पेसिफिकेशन्स ही माझी आहेत, म्हणजे दुसऱ्यांच्याकडे ही नाहीत, माझ्याकडेच आहेत, असं जेव्हा आपण ठरवतो आणि आपण सांगतो की हे माझे क्लेम्स आहेत, तर हे सगळे क्लेम्स तिथे नोट करायला लागतात, सांगायला लागतात. आणि दे हॅव टू बी रिटन इन प्रॉपर लिगल लँग्वेज. कारण ते क्लेम्स आहेत, ते क्लेम्सच एक्झामिन होत असतात. म्हणजे जेव्हा एक्झामिनेशन केलं जातं पेटंट ऍप्लिकेशनचं, तर पेटंट ऍप्लिकेशनचं एक्झामिनेशन ही इज डन क्लेम वाईज. आणि मग त्यातले काही क्लेम्स अलाउ केले जातात की हा हे तुमचे आहेत, बरोबर आहे, कारण आतापर्यंत कोणाचे नव्हते. पण त्यातले काही क्लेम्स रिजेक्ट पण केले जातात, कारण ते दुसऱ्यांच्या सारखे आहेत किंवा अशाच प्रकारचे क्लेम दुसऱ्या कोणीतरी केलेले होते आधीच, ऑलरेडी त्यांना दिले गेलेलं आहे, त्याच्यावर ग्रँट केलं गेलेलं आहे. अशा परिस्थितीमध्ये मग ते क्लेम्स रिजेक्ट होतात. व्हेन वी से नॉवेल्टी, नॉवेल्टीचा अर्थ असा की जी प्रायर आर्ट मध्ये लिहिलेलं नाही. म्हणजे प्रायर आर्ट म्हणजे जे ऑलरेडी पब्लिश्ड लिटरेचर आहे. आणि लिटरेचर कोण पब्लिश करतं, तर देर आर सर्टन स्टँडर्ड्स. से फॉर एक्झाम्पल द पेटंट ऑफिस, म्हणजे इंडियन पेटंट ऑफिस असेल तर IPO हॅज अ जर्नल विच इज पब्लिश्ड एव्हरी फोर्टनाइटली. आणि त्या फोर्टनाइटली जर्नलमध्ये सगळी पेटंट्स, म्हणजे जी पेटंट ऍप्लिकेशन्स असतात ती पहिल्यांदा पब्लिश होतात. आणि ज्यावेळेला ती पेटंट ऍप्लिकेशन्स पब्लिश झालेले असतील, तर त्या पब्लिश झालेल्या पेटंट ऍप्लिकेशनचं त्याच्या डेट वाईज सगळं तिथे दिलेलं असतं, प्रायोरिटी डेट असते. मग तुम्ही ज्या वेळेला अप्लाय करता त्यावेळेला त्याच्या आधी, त्या डेटच्या आधीच्या कुठल्याही पब्लिकेशनमध्ये जर एखादी गोष्ट तुमच्यासारखीच मेन्शन केलेली असेल, तर त्याला तुम्ही म्हणता की बाबा प्रायर आर्ट तिथे आहे, देर एक्झिस्ट अ प्रायर आर्ट. पण जर तसं नसेल, सापडतच नाही कुठेही, तर मग तुम्ही म्हणणार की हे नॉव्हेल आहे, नवीन आहे. आता हे नवीन आहे फक्त IPOच्या जर्नल मधलं असतं का, तर नाही. तर इंटरनॅशनल डेटाबेसेस आहेत भरपूर. या इंटरनॅशनल डेटाबेसेस मध्ये सुद्धा अशा प्रकारचे पेटंट्स किंवा ज्या डिस्कव्हरीज आहेत त्या पब्लिश केल्या जातात. या व्यतिरिक्त निरनिराळी इंटरनॅशनल स्टँडर्ड जर्नल्स आहेत, सायंटिफिक अँड टेक्निकल जर्नल्स आहेत. या जर्नल्समध्ये म्हणजे IEEE जर्नल्स असतील किंवा स्प्रिंजरचे जर्नल्स असतील, ACM जर्नल्स असतील, तर या वेगवेगळ्या जर्नल्समध्ये, इंटरनॅशनल स्टँडर्ड जर्नल्समध्ये जे पेपर्स पब्लिश केले जातात, त्या सगळ्या पेपर्सना प्रायर आर्ट म्हणून कन्सिडर केलं जातं. म्हणजे त्याच्यात डिस्क्राईब केलेलं काहीतरी सापडलं विच इज सिमिलर टू युअर्स ऑर सेम ॲज युअर्स, देन युअर ऍप्लिकेशन इज रिजेक्टेड. याचा अर्थ असा की तुम्ही ज्या वेळेला तुमचं काहीतरी नवीन रिसर्च करणार आहात, नवीन काहीतरी प्रोडक्ट शोधणार आहात, तर हे तुमचं सुद्धा ऍप्लिकेशन त्याच्यावर रिजेक्ट होऊ शकतो की तुमचाच पेपर आहे आणि हे आमचंच आहे बाबा, हे काय दुसरं वेगळं नाहीये, असं चालत नाही. म्हणून मग असं त्याच्याबद्दल म्हटलं जातं, म्हणजे ऍज अ पॉलिसी इट इज स्टेटेड दॅट इफ यू वॉन्ट टू रजिस्टर फॉर पेटंट, तर पेटंट ऍप्लिकेशन तुम्ही आधी करा आणि मग तुम्ही पेपर पब्लिकेशनला पाठवा. म्हणजे जो काही तुमचं जे काही रिसर्च केलेलं असेल त्याचं पब्लिकेशन करत असताना किंवा इव्हन तुम्ही एखाद्या कॉन्फरन्समध्ये तो पेपर प्रेझेंट करणार असाल तर इव्हन दॅट प्रेझेंटेशन विल गो अगेन्स्ट यू. कारण त्या कॉन्फरन्समध्ये तुम्ही प्रेझेंट केलं आणि ते कुठेतरी रेकॉर्ड झालेलं आहे आणि दॅट रेकॉर्ड कॅन बी युज्ड अगेन्स्ट यू ॲज अ प्रायर आर्ट. सो त्यामुळे तुम्ही ज्यावेळेला रिसर्च करणार असाल त्यावेळेला तो रिसर्च पहिल्यांदा तुम्ही प्रोटेक्ट करा अंडर पेटंट्स ऍक्ट किंवा IPR, आणि मग त्याच्यानंतर मे बी द व्हेरी नेक्स्ट डे ऑर ऑन द सेम डे यू कॅन सेंड that paper for publication or send it in the conferences. अशा प्रकारची ती व्यवस्था आहे.
बरोबर सर. एक पाबळच्या कॅम्पसमधून एक प्रश्न होता की पेटंट जर फाईल करायचं असेल तर आपण स्वतः करू शकतो की आपल्याला ॲडव्होकेटचीच मदत घ्यावी लागते?
इन प्रिन्सिपल आपण स्वतः करू शकतो, पण प्रॅक्टिकली देर इज अ प्रॉब्लेम. काय प्रॉब्लेम आहे त्याच्यामध्ये? तर इन प्रिन्सिपल आपण का करू शकतो, तर आपल्याला काय फक्त तिथे ऑनलाईन ऍप्लिकेशन करायचं असतो, त्या ऍप्लिकेशन फॉर्म मध्ये जी काही रिलेव्हंट माहिती आहे ती भरायची आहे. पण पेटंट ऍप्लिकेशन ड्राफ्ट करत असताना त्याचे जे काही आपण वर्णन करणार आहोत ते वर्णन करत असताना आपण कोणाच्या पेटंटला इन्फ्रिंज करत नाही आहोत. आपण त्याचा सफिशियंट प्रायर आर्ट सर्च केलेला आहे, आपण आपले क्लेम्स प्रॉपरली लिहून काढलेले आहेत आणि ते अशा प्रकारे लिहिले की कोणी त्यांना इन्फ्रिंज करू शकणार नाही, म्हणजे कोणी त्याचं मिसइंटरप्रिटेशन करू शकणार नाही अशा लँग्वेजमध्ये ते लिहिणं, यासाठी पेटंट अटर्नीचा किंवा पेटंट एजंटचा उपयोग होतो अँड दे आर वेल ट्रेन्ड इन दॅट. म्हणजे आपण काय की आपण एखादंच ऍप्लिकेशन करणार असो त्यामुळे आपल्याला ती कल्पना नसते की या शब्दाचा अर्थ काय होतो किंवा हे वाक्य जे आहे हे कोण कशा पद्धतीने त्याची मोडतोड करू शकतो. तर ते आपल्याला माहिती नसल्यामुळे, तो अनुभव नसल्यामुळे आपल्याकडे मेनी टाइम्स इट इज युजफुल टू टेक हेल्प ऑफ एक्सपिरियन्स पेटंट अटर्नीज ऑर पेटंट एजंट्स.
बरोबर. एक प्रोफेसर गणेश पिंगळे आहेत, त्यांचा प्रश्न असा आहे की युनिव्हर्सिटीमधनं आपल्याला काही मदत होऊ शकते का मग हे करताना, आणि कशा प्रकारची होऊ शकेल?
युनिव्हर्सिटीमध्ये बेसिकली एक पेटंट सेल आहे आणि या पेटंट सेलमध्ये बेसिकली तुम्हाला जर पेटंट ऍप्लिकेशन करायचं असेल तर यू कॅन अप्लाय फॉर फायनान्शियल असिस्टन्स थ्रू युनिव्हर्सिटी फंड्स. तर ते जर त्या पेटंट सेलची जी काही मीटिंग असते ती पिरियडिकली होत असते, साधारणपणे एव्हरी 2 months or 3 months द मीटिंग टेक्स प्लेस. त्या मीटिंगमध्ये एक्सपर्ट्स असतात, ते आधी तुमचं ऍप्लिकेशन स्क्रुटिनाइज करतात आणि ते ऍप्लिकेशन स्क्रुटिनाइज केल्यानंतर आवश्यकता वाटली तर तुम्हाला प्रेझेंटेशनसाठी तिथे बोलवलं जातं. आफ्टर प्रेझेंटेशन इफ दे फाइंड दॅट देर इज अ सबस्टन्स इन युअर क्लेम अँड युअर इन्व्हेन्शन, तर मग ते तुम्हाला सपोर्ट करण्यासाठी रेकमेंड करतात. इन दॅट केस 80% ऑफ द एक्सपेंडिचर दॅट यू वुड हॅव ऑन फायलिंग द पेटंट ऍप्लिकेशन इन्क्लुडिंग द फीज ऑफ द पेटंट अटर्नी, हे त्याच्या 80% तुम्हाला युनिव्हर्सिटीकडनं फायनान्शियल असिस्टन्स मिळू शकतो.
आणि याच्यामध्ये फक्त युनिव्हर्सिटीचे विद्यार्थीच याचा बेनिफिट घेऊ शकतात की कोणी पण?
नाही, या प्रोसेसमध्ये युनिव्हर्सिटीचे विद्यार्थीच, कारण युनिव्हर्सिटीची असोसिएटेड स्टेक होल्डर्सच फक्त त्यामध्ये येऊ शकतात.
ओके ओके. आता तरी प्रश्न नाही. सर आपण एक मग साधारणतः पुढच्या 5 ते 7 मिनिटात कॉपीराईट आपण थोडं रन थ्रू जर केलं तर तर त्याची माहिती इमिडिएटली सगळ्यांना मिळून जाईल.
नक्की नक्की.
थँक्यू.
सो या स्लाइडमध्ये माझा प्रयत्न असा आहे की आपल्याला टेरिटोरियल नेचर जे आहे, म्हणजे आपण आपलं जे काही पेटंट ऍप्लिकेशन किंवा जे काही ट्रेडमार्कचं ऍप्लिकेशन जे असेल ते आपल्या कंट्रीमध्येच करू शकतो का, तर अशी आवश्यकता नाही. आपण त्याला इंटरनॅशनल ऍप्लिकेशन सुद्धा करू शकतो आणि या इंटरनॅशनल ऍप्लिकेशनच्या माध्यमातून आपल्याला वर्ल्ड वाईड त्याचे राईट्स पण मिळू शकतात. वर्ल्ड वाईड राईट्स घेण्याचा उपयोग काय आहे, तर आपला जो काही बिझनेस असेल, आपल्याला जी ऍक्टिव्हिटी करायची आहे याचा जर स्कोप फक्त आपल्या देशापुरताच मर्यादित असेल तर आपल्या टेरिटोरी पुरतच आपण घ्यावं. पण जर आपल्याला इंटरनॅशनल मार्केटमध्ये काही काम करायचं आहे, आपले प्रोडक्ट्स जे आहेत इंटरनॅशनल मार्केटमध्ये पाठवायचे, तर त्या केसमध्ये आपल्याला इंटरनॅशनल IPR मिळवणं हे आवश्यक ठरतं. त्याच्यासाठी पूर्वी खूप कॉम्प्लिकेटेड प्रोसेस होती, म्हणजे त्या देशांमध्ये जाऊन ऍप्लिकेशन करायची, असं करायला लागायचं. पण नंतर आता जे काही वर्ल्ड इंटरनॅशनल प्रॉपर्टी ऑर्गनायझेशन इस्टॅब्लिश झालेली आहे जिनेवामध्ये. तर त्या ऑर्गनायझेशनच्या माध्यमातून वन कॅन अप्लाय फ्रॉम विदिन युअर कंट्री. त्याला फी आहे, जास्त हायर फी आहे थोडीशी, पण त्याच्यासाठी आपल्याला वेगवेगळ्या देशांमध्ये IPR तुम्हाला मिळवता येऊ शकतो. हे तुम्हाला बिझनेस प्लॅन तुम्ही कसं करणार, म्हणजे तुम्हाला असं वाटलं किंवा तुमच्याकडे अशा प्रकारचं प्रोडक्ट आहे की विच विल बी युजफुल विदिन इंडिया ॲज वेल ॲज इट विल बी युजफुल से इन जपान और इट विल बी युजफुल इन ऑस्ट्रेलिया. तर मग तुम्ही दोनच कंट्रीज मधल्या, म्हणजे भारता व्यतिरिक्त आणखी 2 कंट्रीज मध्ये तुम्ही रजिस्टर करू शकता. तुम्हाला वाटलं नाही मला या 2 कंट्रीज नाही, अजून 5 कंट्रीज हव्यात, तुम्हाला 5 कंट्रीज मध्ये करू शकता. कारण सगळ्या देशातल्या, कारण 140-170 अशा कंट्रीज या करारामध्ये आहेत, तर त्या सगळ्यांच्याकडे आपण रजिस्टर करण्याची आवश्यकता नाही. वर्ल्ड वाईड त्याचं स्कोप ठेवण्याची आवश्यकता नाही. प्रत्येक जेवढे कंट्रीज ऍड होतील तेवढं त्याची फी ऍड होणार आहे, त्याचं मेंटेनन्स फी पण ऍड होणार आहे. सो वी जस्ट गो अहेड अँड वी से दॅट विल बी टॉकिंग अबाउट जॉग्राफिकल इंडिकेटर्स. मला वाटतं त्याच्यावर फारसं न बोललं लागतं बरं, पण कॉपीराईट्स कडे येऊ आपण पटकन. तर कॉपीराईट्स हे जे काही आहे हे खूप महत्वाचे हे आहे. बेसिकली जे नॉलेज फील्डमध्ये काम करणारे आहेत, म्हणजे ऑल ऑफ अस हू आर वर्किंग इन द नॉलेज फील्ड, वी नीड टू अंडरस्टँड व्हॉट इज द कॉपीराइट अँड हाऊ द कॉपीराइट्स आर एक्सरसाइज्ड अँड दे आर युजफुल. So copyright is a legal term describing rights given to the creator of their literary and artistic works. The kind of works covered by copyright include literary work such as novels, poems, plays, reference works, newspapers, and computer programs. Here we have to note that the software, what we basically look at, is not patentable in India. Indian patent system does not allow the software to be patented. It is only copyrighted. So copyright is a right kind of IPR for the software, computer programs. Similarly for databases, films, musical compositions and choreography, artistic works such as painting, drawing, photographs and sculpture, architecture and advertisement, maps and technical drawings. So these all are protectable by copyright. So when you have created one of these, you can essentially go for applying for the copyright. The copyrights will be naturally scrutinized, there will be examination, and after the examination, the copyright is awarded to you if your work is original. So artistic works means paintings, sculptures, drawings, etc. So any such kind of work, if published within the lifetime of the author of the literary work, the term is for the lifetime of the author plus 60 years. म्हणजे तुम्हाला जे काही कॉपीराइट तुम्ही एकदा रजिस्टर केलात की तुमच्या आयुष्यापुरताच मर्यादित नाही, तर तुमचं आयुष्य संपल्यानंतर सुद्धा 60 वर्षापर्यंत हा कॉपीराइट तुमच्याकडे, म्हणजे तुम्ही ज्यांना कोणाला असाइन केला असेल त्यांच्याकडे असतो. सो व्हेनेवर यू राईट एनिथिंग, whether it is a book, whether it is a manual, whether it is technical literature, you can go for copywriting. Unless you do the registration, म्हणजे तुम्ही लिहिलं आणि म्हटलं की हे माझं कॉपीराइटेड मटेरियल आहे, किंवा तुम्हीच डिक्लेअर करून टाकलं की दिस इज कॉपीराइट विथ मी, असं चालणार नाही. तुम्हाला कॉपीराइटेड मटेरियल साठी पहिल्यांदा तुमचा कॉपीराइट इस्टॅब्लिश करावा लागेल, तुम्हाला कॉपीराइट रजिस्टर करावं लागेल. यू हॅव टू गो टू द IPR ऑफिस and miss virtually, naturally online, and then you have to register that. After the registration is done, there will be examination done properly, and once they are confirmed that your work is original work and it is copyrightable, they'll issue a certificate. This certificate is allowing you to use your work for your lifetime, as well as further on after 60 up to 60 years for your whosoever whom you assign that particular copyright. For cinematographic films, records, photographs, some publications after your death, anonymous publications, works of government and international agencies, the term is 60 years from the beginning of the calendar year following the year in which the work was published. For broadcasting, the term is 25 years from the beginning of the calendar year following that. So you have the term for broadcasting, it is 25 years, but for others it is 60 years. 60 years for the first case where it is the authorship after the life of that author, 60 years more, and for other things it is 60 years from the date when the thing was created. So with all these copyrights as such, you can, this is a basic right that you can have. Whatever copy you have created, whatever knowledge you have documented, for that knowledge, for documentation of that knowledge, you get the rights. The advantage of taking copyright is that if somebody else wants to use it, then you can charge license fee for that. Without your knowledge, others cannot use it. If they use it, you have every right to take them to the court, and from the court they will be penalized in manner similar to what we considered for the trademarks. This is of course not as severe as the trademark, in the sense that for the trademarks it is primarily meant for business, whereas the authorship or some such kind of creative works, they are not meant for primarily business, they are meant for your personal satisfaction, and therefore the severity of punishment here is little less, but still there will be some punishment. There will be penalties, there will be fines, there will be imprisonments also, depending on the severity of your crime. So this is the situation with copyrights. Now, last few minutes I would like to spend on something else, especially the portfolio building. When you say that you are looking into the domain of intellectual property rights, you have to have a portfolio of the intellectual property rights. If you are as an individual or maybe as an organization, you are creating not just one of kind of intellectual property right. You are not just satisfied with one particular invention and then you stop. You take the patent of it, or you take the trademark of it, or you take the copyright of it, and then that's it. So really don't do that. You have to really have a bunch of such intellectual property rights created, and they are exercised appropriately. Seed, nurture, cultivate, and harvest inventions. So you have to do this. You have to have number of them created and used further to create present, immediate future, and distant future portfolios for intellectual property performance, and that essentially can be used for creating wealth. So for the intellectuals who are listening to this lecture, it is quite important that we should consider this as an activity which will give us a lot of wealth. Say for example, probably all of us are aware of the two leading names in the IPR wealth domain. One is Bill Gates, and the other is so what basically happens with them, or happened with them, is that they created the business, but what is important is their wealth is created through their intellectual property right. So one can create the wealth by way of say, this is again a very legal and broad sense of creation of the wealth. You have what is called as the intellectual capital, and you can use this intellectual capital to create the wealth from different say aspects, like you can have patents, you can have trademarks, you have the rights, copyrights, trade secrets, various kinds of other things, and this whole thing is bunched together, and we call it as a kind of portfolio. Now what is important is that once you have these rights, you have various options available, and these options, they include exploit the IPR yourself. Yes, you have the IPR, use it, fine. or else you can have also the option available for providing IPR to other parties with mutual negotiation benefit sharing arrangements. So it is through this you can create some amount of wealth. You can have some kind of resource here. As I said that there is a period of 20 years for the patent, 60 years for the copyright. So you can make arrangements. We know that various literary works which have been done by leading authors, they have been published by number of say commercial publishing houses, and these commercial publishing houses, they have a joint ownership of copyright with the authors, so that apart from selling that particular product or that book, they have the copyright related collection, and this copyright related collection, what essentially is said to be the royalty given to the original creators. So the royalty is shared with the authors, and that royalty is a mutually beneficial kind of thing, as well as it is perpetual for years after the creation. Still you keep on getting the royalty. So you have this licensing of the IPR to other party. This is option one can exercise. Then there is a cross licensing. That is basically your collaborating. Yes, you want something from somebody else, instead of paying him upfront, you can say that, okay, you give me that, I'll give you this. So that kind of exchange can have. Then you have the assigning the IPR to another party for an appropriate return. That return may not be in the cash, but it could be in kind. Maybe it could be in the form of giving you certain benefits in some other ventures and so on. Or it could be a barter of rights, this exchange of rights. Say, I give you these rights, you give me equivalent some other rights. So that way one can go for the IPR. Then one can establish a franchise system involving other parties. That means you would use this IPR for some purpose, but in that our name will be always mentioned. Say for example, we find that the McDonald's is one of the major worldwide system that is seen as franchise system, and every McDonald kind of outlet, you would find that it is exactly following the same pattern, same kind of goods are sold, and same kind of methodologies are adopted worldwide. So this is a franchise system. Though the people who are operating here, say for example at one of the corners in our city, so those people, they will be different. They are not original McDonald company related people, but they have an agreement, franchise agreement, that, oh, they'll have the franchise of McDonald, and McDonald will get certain benefits out of it. They will have certain say control over their operations. They will have the rights of inspection, etc. But that's the franchise kind of arrangement. You can take action against those who infringe the right. That is something which is important. Because of the fear of such action, people are deterred from infringing your rights. And it is here again the patent attorneys, they become significantly important, because patent attorney's role is not only drafting and getting your patent clear or any IPR cleared from the registration process, but it is further to look at who is infringing and manage it over the period. And then after you are alerted, with your consent, he can file a suit against the infringer. So such kind of thing is again there, and through this action you can again get much of return for your wealth. Let the rights selectively lapse in certain countries. So just don't worry about something, because in that country probably the operations are very difficult to manage and so on. So under that pretext, you can let the rights lapse. So such kind of things you can do with your IPRs, and for that purpose you must have a large number of IPRs created. So probably I think all the audience today, they should have in their mind that they will not be satisfied with obtaining one IPR only. Many a times it so happens that, oh, I have got one patent, so I am happy, or I have got one copyright and I'm happy. But that should not happen. You should essentially have a system of IPR with you, large number of them, and not necessarily you can do it on individual basis. It could be organizational basis. So number of organizations, they can also define that we want to create the IPR kind of portfolio, and we will have IPR manager also, and the IPR manager will keep a watch on various activities, will promote people to register for IPRs, would look at the licensing and the kind of arrangements which are there for creating the wealth and extracting the value for the IPR, as well as we'll have a legal system which will be taking action against the others for infringing. So we can do the valuation of the knowledge in IPR. We can license for IPR. IPR insurance also you may have, because many times it so happens that something happens by accident, your IPR is slipped out. Maybe it is because it is going out of the term, or maybe somebody else has infringed on your IPR, but you didn't notice in appropriate time, and so on. Some such things happen. So for that, insurance is also there. There will be collateral security also you can give as IPR, because it has got a value. So this value essentially can be used as a collateral security for obtaining loans and other funding opportunities. So for this purpose, for this to happen, the institutions should have their vision and mission in this direction. They should have the activities of the institutions aligned in this direction. There should be interaction of the institutions with the outside world, interactions within the institution, and various human resources which are available within the institution, the kind of employees of the institution, the kind of people who are coming as temporary inmates like the students or interns. So with all of them, what kind of IPR sharing will be done, or what kind of IPR promotion activities will be done. So these all things, they have to be properly documented in the IPR policy. And then with this IPR policy in place, you can really look for generating a lot of benefits out of the IPR. So I think I'm coming to the close of my talk today. There is huge amount of excitement in creating something new, but creating something new doesn't end, or it is not concluded at making it, but you have to have the process in such a way that whatever is made, that is used, and for the purpose of using it, you have to essentially take it to the market. When you are taking it to the market, you have to basically protect it. You have lots of activities which are technical activities which are done before it. So you have the idea, you define it, test it, design it, brand it, create a trademark, protect, and then let it be used by the society. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. आपण काही क्विक क्वेश्चन्स घेऊया. चार्ट मध्ये एक क्वेश्चन आला की काइंड ऑफ डॉक्युमेंट्स रिक्वायर्ड फॉर पेटंट फाइलिंग. व्हॉट आर द काइंड ऑफ डॉक्युमेंट्स?
बेसिकली तुम्हाला तुमचं जे काही पेटंट फाईल करायचं असेल, तर त्या दृष्टिकोनातून तुमचं जे काही इन्व्हेन्शन आहे त्याचं कम्प्लीट डिस्क्रिप्शन तुम्हाला तयार करून द्यावं लागतं. हे कम्प्लीट डिस्क्रिप्शन हे तुम्ही स्वतः करू शकता, किंवा तुम्ही पेटंट अटर्नीच्या सल्ल्याने म्हणजे त्याला सगळी माहिती देऊन ते तुम्ही देऊ शकता, त्याच्याकडनं करून घेऊ शकता. त्याच्यामध्ये मुख्यतः वेन वी आर वर्किंग ऑन डेव्हलपमेंट ऑफ सम न्यू इन्व्हेंटिव्ह प्रोडक्ट, तिथे आपण वर्किंगच्या स्टेप्स ज्या आहेत त्या स्टेप्स प्रॉपरली डॉक्युमेंट करणं आवश्यक असतं. देअर हॅज टू बी अ प्रॉपर इन्व्हेंटर्स डायरी. म्हणजे अमक्या दिवशी मी हे केलं, याच्यानंतर ही प्रोसेस केली, त्यानंतर ते केलं, अशा प्रकारे प्रोडक्टचं टेस्टिंग केलं. या सगळ्या गोष्टी प्रॉपरली डॉक्युमेंटेड फॉर्म मध्ये तुमच्याकडे असावे लागतात. नोबडी आस्क देम अपफ्रंट. फाईल करताना तुम्हाला ते कोणी विचारत नाही, पण एक्झामिनेशन करत असताना वेन द पेटंट इज अंडर स्क्रुटिनी, त्यावेळेला जर शंका आली तर ते तुम्हाला विचारू शकतात किंवा तुम्ही केलं होतं का, तुमच्याकडे काय त्याचं प्रूफ आहे. तर मग हे प्रूफ तुमची डायरी जी असते लॅबोरेटरी डायरी, तर ही लॅबोरेटरी डायरी ही त्या पेटंट एक्झामिनेशनच्या दरम्यान प्रूफ म्हणून वापरता येऊ शकते. त्या व्यतिरिक्त तुम्हाला डेमॉन्स्ट्रेशन करण्यासाठी ते सांगू शकतात. म्हणजे तुमचं प्रोडक्ट तुम्ही जर तयार केलेलं असेल तर प्रोडक्टचा प्रोटोटाईप तुमच्याकडे हातात असावा हवा आणि तो प्रोडक्ट इतर तशा प्रकारच्या प्रोडक्ट्सपेक्षा वेगळा कसा आहे हे तुम्हाला दाखवून देता यायला हवं. तर त्या दृष्टिकोनातून म्हणजे ऍप्लिकेशन करताना यू डोंट नीड ऑल दिस, बट यू हॅव टू बी प्रिपेअर्ड विथ ऑल. ऍप्लिकेशन करताना फक्त एक डॉक्युमेंट तुम्हाला सबमिट करायचं आहे. त्या व्यतिरिक्त तुमचे अर्थात जे काही KYC ज्याला म्हणतो आपण तशा प्रकारची डॉक्युमेंट्स लागतातच. म्हणजे ती कुठल्याही गोष्टीसाठी लागतात, तशी इथेही लागतात. पण त्या व्यतिरिक्त फार मोठं काही प्रोसेस नाही.
सर एक शब्द होता जिओग्राफिकल इंडिकेशन, त्याच्याबद्दल थोडक्यात काहीतरी सांगा ना.
जॉग्राफिकल इंडिकेशन ही जी गोष्ट आहे ती काही गोष्टी ठराविक लोकेशन मध्येच जास्त प्रसिद्ध असतात किंवा तिथे त्यांचं ओरिजिन असतं. म्हणजे फॉर एक्झाम्पल आपल्याकडे सगळ्यात जास्त आपल्याला माहिती असलं म्हणजे कोल्हापुरी चप्पल. तर कोल्हापूरमध्ये ते तयार होतात आणि त्यांची एक स्पेशालिटी आहे. त्या ठराविक पद्धतीने तयार केल्या जातात, त्यांचा शेप ठराविक प्रकारचा असतो, त्यांचं फील वेगळं असतं. तर अशा प्रकारचा जो काही हे असेल तर त्याला जॉग्राफिक इंडिकेशन म्हटलं जातं. सिमिलर दुसरा जो असा आपल्या माहितीतला जो आहे तो बेसिकली रत्नागिरी हापूस. तर रत्नागिरीमध्ये जो पिकतो ती जी व्हरायटी असते आंब्याची, तो रत्नागिरी हापूस म्हणून, म्हणजे त्या जॉग्राफिकल लोकेशनसाठी. तसे आंबे हे कुठेही होऊ शकतात, चप्पल कुठे तयार होऊ शकतात, पण त्या लोकेशनची स्पेशालिटी म्हणून त्याला जॉग्राफिकल इंडिकेशन म्हणतात आणि त्याचं ब्रँडिंग त्यामुळे होतं.
थँक्यू सर. म्हणजे दार्जिलिंग टी.
दार्जिलिंग टी.
परफेक्ट. थँक्यू सर. थँक्यू व्हेरी मच.
ओके, आता तरी काही प्रश्न दिसत नाहीयेत. आपण या सेशनच्या समारोपाकडे मी डेप्युटी डायरेक्टर रणजित शहानबाग सरांना विनंती करतो की सर तुम्ही सरांचे आभार मानावेत. रणजित शहानबाग सर.
येतोय?
येस, आवाज येतोय.
हा, खरं तर आभार मानणं असा काही म्हणजे फॉर्मॅलिटी शालिग्राम सरांना आवडत पण नाही. आम्ही खूपदा युनिव्हर्सिटीत किंवा पाबळला पण भेटतो. म्हणजे मी नेहमी असं म्हणतो की शालिग्राम सर इज अ कॉल अवे. म्हणजे कुठलीही फॉर्मॅलिटी न पाळता सरांना फोन करता येतो, सरांना भेटता येतं. आणि आजचा टॉपिक खरं तर इतका वास्ट होता की ज्यामध्ये इतके बारकावे आणि इतक्या गोष्टी आहेत, तर तो आणि आपल्या सगळ्या टेक्निकल लोकांना म्हणजे इंजिनियर्स असू देत, सायन्स बॅकग्राऊंड असू देत, ह्यांना हा तसा न आवडणारा टॉपिक आहे. कारण ह्याला परत एकदा डॉक्युमेंटेशन, स्ट्रॉंग डॉक्युमेंटेशन जोडलेलं आहे. त्यामुळं तो टॉपिक सहजरित्या एक्सप्लेन करणं आणि ती उदाहरणं देऊन, म्हणजे ह्याच्यामध्ये उदाहरणं नसतील तर ह्या गोष्टी समजणं खूप अवघड जातं. तर प्रत्येक गोष्टीला ते उदाहरण जोडलं तरच समजतं की एक्झॅक्टली काय म्हणायचंय. कारण खूप टेक्निकल लँग्वेज आहे, खूप त्याच्यामध्ये डिटेलिंग करायला लागतं. तर मी विज्ञान आश्रम आणि आपल्या ह्या सगळ्या ग्रुपच्या वतीनं, म्हणजे आपल्या कॉलेजचे प्रोफेसर, आपले स्टुडंट, यांच्या वतीनं मी शालिग्राम सरांचे खूप आभार मानतो. आणि आमच्यापैकी कोणालाही आयदर DICच्या थ्रू असू देत किंवा ऍज अ युनिव्हर्सिटी अल्युमिनाय किंवा युनिव्हर्सिटी ग्रुप मेंबर म्हणून काही मदत लागली तर आम्ही नक्की हे जे युनिव्हर्सिटीचं सेल आहे त्याला अप्रोच होऊ. आणि त्यामध्ये, कारण ऍक्च्युअल एखाद्या माझ्या वर्कचं, एखाद्या इनोव्हेशनचं किंवा एखाद्या सायंटिफिक वर्कचं जेव्हा पेटंट फाईल करायची वेळ येईल तेव्हा खूप जास्त प्रश्न पडतील, तेव्हा खूप अडचणी येतील. तर तेव्हा आम्ही सर नक्कीच तुम्हाला अप्रोच होऊ आणि युनिव्हर्सिटीला अप्रोच होऊ आणि तुमची मदत घेऊ. तर तुम्ही इतका वेळ दिलात, खरं तर आपलं 1 तासाचं सेशन होतं, पण तुम्ही इतका वेळ दिलात, इतक्या डिटेलमध्ये ह्या सगळ्या गोष्टी समजून सांगितल्यात, त्याबद्दल मी ह्या ग्रुपच्या वतीनं आणि विज्ञान आश्रमाच्या वतीनं तुमचे आभार मानतो.